Welcome back to the Grease Goblins Rereads channel. Today's video, we're going to be tackling Bran 5, A Clash of Kings. Things are starting to heat up in terms of the Winterfell plot. We're getting very close to Theon's start of his journey in the north, and the Greyjoys really making a terrible war decision. But again, we're getting a lot of that heating up. We're seeing Bran getting more and more into the magical arc of his journey, which will really start to pick up more in A Dance with Dragons, because The Storm of Swords is kind of this weird book in terms of a transition, right? It's Bran is trying to get to the teacher to awaken his powers. But, it's one of the biggest criticisms I have for A Storm of Swords is there's not too much of an actual arc for Bran. Whereas in this book, there's a clear arc for Bran, but that's not here or there. Let's talk about Bran in A Clash of Kings and Bran 5, starting on page 390. Alebelly finds Bran in the forge working the bellows for Mycon and tells him Maester Luwin wants him in the turret due to a message from the king. We're going to learn more about what actually is happening in the West with Robb. We got a little bit of that with Sansa, but here we're going to learn a little bit more from Robb's point of view and all of that stuff. Bran is excited, assuming the message is from Robb, and rushes up the steps with Alebelly carrying him since Hodor is not present. And if you're Bran, you got to remember, as someone who's not really allowed to leave Winterfell, you're not allowed to really do any of these really interesting things that you wish you could have done because of your physical condition. Hearing news is going to be one of the more interesting things. And we, I think, take news for granted now in today's world because we have access to news all the time, whether it's our cell phones, whether it's the TV, whatever. We're almost, I think, overcome by the amount of news we get. Whereas here, news takes a long time to travel, and so news is really exciting. What's happening with Robb? Has he beaten Tywin? What has he done? And that's what's all going through Bran's mind. Also, you could be thinking, well, if he beats Tywin, is the war over? Is Robb going to come home? Is his mother going to come home? All that type of stuff. Alebelly struggles to carry Bran, arriving at the turret red-faced and winded. Rickon and the two Walder Freys are already in the turret when they arrive, as Maester Luwin dismisses Alebelly and closes the door to speak privately with the boys. And Luwin announces that Robb has sent a message containing both good and bad news. This is very important because when you think about going back to Bran 4, we have this kind of vision that's told to Bran by Mira that Jojen had. And it's about how Bran is going to be served this good food while the Freys are served bad food, but both have kind of the opposite reactions. And so that's what we're going to get here in the start of this chapter, where Bran's going to get really good news, but he's not really going to be all that happy about it. And then the Walders, you would think, are going to get really bad news, but they end up having a different reaction to it. So let's get into what that news is. Robb has achieved a major victory at Oxcross, defeating a Lannister army and capturing several castles. At this point, Robb has gone further now than even what we've talked about within that Sansa chapter. Whereas in Sansa's chapter, we see that Robb has beaten Sir Stafford Lannister and his forces. Now Robb is going further than that. He's taking castles. He is writing from Ashmark, the former seat of House Marbrand. We know Adam Marbrand, a very important character. Well, maybe not very important, but he's an interesting character in terms of, especially as we get into A Feast for Crows, somebody that's with Jaime, somebody that was like a childhood friend of Jaime's. This is the house, this is the castle that they're kind of referring to. This would be the person that you would look at for the Marbrands. Rickon asks if Robb is coming home, but Maester Luwin says not yet, as there are still battles to fight. Bran inquires if Robb defeated Lord Tywin, but Maester Luwin says it was Sir Stafford Lannister who commanded the defeated army and was killed in battle. And this is the point of it, right? Yes, this is good news that Robb is winning these battles in the West and all of this stuff. It's making his side look even better with all these different victories. But Bran is also going to realize it doesn't mean the war is over. He's just avoiding the big battle. The big battle is with Tywin, right? Tywin is the person that Robb has to defeat for this war to be over. And as of right now, that is still yet to occur. So for Bran, it's good news, but it's not something that's going to make him happy. Like Rickon was asking, it doesn't mean Robb is going to come home. Bran doesn't even recognize this Sir Stafford and agrees with Big Walder's comment that only Lord Tywin truly matters. So you get the first half of this vision. The first half is Bran gets good news, but he doesn't really react all that happily to it. And let's be honest, Big Walder is correct. As we get into page 391, Rickon tells Maester Luwin to have Robb come home with his wolf, mother, and father, still refusing to accept their father's death. Rickon is at a young enough age that he doesn't really understand death. He doesn't understand the concept that his father's never going to come home. And at a young age Rickon is, you can't really blame him. Bran suspects Rickon is willfully forgetting and reflects on Osha's warnings that Robb was heading the wrong way. Again, Bran looks at this and goes, what is this war kind of accomplishing? You know, with this stuff with the others that's kind of been creeping up and the wildlings are going to attack soon. It is something that just Bran does not really take as being all that great. Maester Luwin then turns to the Freys, where this is where we get the second half of that vision. He reports that Sir Stevron Frey died after the battle at Oxcross from a wound that was thought to be minor. Now, many in the fandom, myself included, have thought that maybe this was something that was actually an assassination attempt. Maybe Black Walder had Sir Stevron Frey killed. Sir Stevron Frey was in line to be the next Lord of the Crossing, but dies from a wound that was thought to be minor. Now, of course, there is a very easy idea of this, is that the injury got infected, similar to Khal Drogo. Khal Drogo had a very minor injury. Well, not minor, but like it wasn't fatal, right? And then it gets infected. So, same idea here, but the Walders don't really show any grief. You would expect them to maybe show something, be a bit sad about it, but they're even like giddy about it. Big Walder calls Stevron too old for war, and Little Walder jokes about the succession. They debate about who the next Frey heir will be, with Little Walder declaring he'll be Lord one day. Again, the Freys, a lot of them don't really care about their family. It's a lot about family politics and all these different lines of, Walder Frey and all that stuff. I want to take a moment of silence for Stevron Frey because I think he's one of the cooler Freys. I think he's a very underrated character. We don't see a ton of him. We see him a lot at the King of the North chapter at the end of A Game of Thrones, where he makes a lot of rational points about the war. Unfortunately, Stevron Frey does go out here. Luwin chastises them for their callousness, but they show fake sorrow. Bran feels uneasy and asks to leave, as he seems to be coming to the conclusion of this vision being true. The Walders were given bad news, but they seem almost happy about it. Osha then comes to carry him, and on the way, Bran asks Osha about the far north. She says to follow the Ice Dragon and the Blue Star. She's seen giants, heard of the children of the forest, and knows of the White Walkers. It's all interesting because Bran now understands that there must be something to these visions. They have to be at least in some way true because this vision came true. And it's something that you couldn't have just dreamed and, it's just random guess type situation. Like, this is something that is incredible, right? You predict that Bran is going to get good news, but he's going to respond bad to it. And the Freys are going to get, bad news, but respond good to it. Like, that's just something you can't necessarily predict. And so that's what Bran is coming to the realization of. Bran then asks about the three-eyed crow, and Osha hasn't seen one and jokes she wouldn't want to. She brings Bran to his window seat to watch the yard below, as we get into page 392. Shortly after Osha leaves, Jojen and Mira Reed enter Bran's room uninvited. Bran tells them the bird was a letter from Robb, not food, as Jojen had implied earlier. It's still Bran subconsciously trying to rationalize what's going on, that yes, they are wrong, even though it might be somewhat truthful, this vision, right? The implications of it were right. It was not exactly the case, right? It wasn't exactly related to food. But Jojen explains that green dreams are often appear in strange forms and aren't always clear. It's the same idea with Melisandre. We see with her trying to do her visions in A Dance with Dragons, and throughout the series, really, she has trouble interpreting what the visions are telling her. And so, for instance, when she's seeing snow, and she keeps asking for her Azor Ahai, and it's not showing her Stannis, it's actually showing her more of things like with Jon. She doesn't interpret that the way I think other people will, and that's something that Jojen's trying to show to Bran, is that the message of what his visions are usually always true, but in terms of directly what happens is not exactly clear. Bran asks Jojen to tell him the bad thing he dreamed about Winterfell, because now Bran is curious. If Jojen's dreams are true, if Jojen has a dream that has something negative about Winterfell, it is very important. Jojen insists Bran must now trust him, and Bran does agree. Jojen says the sea is coming to Winterfell. He dreamed of black waves crashing over the castle walls, drowning people inside. We know this to be the case. We know that the Greyjoys are coming. We know that Theon is going to take Winterfell. Now, a little bit of this is interesting because Theon is not going to be the person that puts everybody in Winterfell to the death. We know that it's going to be Ramsay. But it is interesting, right? On the face value of it, it's Theon is coming. And you also think about the color of their sigil being kind of the black within the gold or the yellow being the Kraken. It's interesting the way that this comes off as, because in a way it's very face value of it's the Greyjoys, but on the other part of it, it's also this black dread of Ramsay also coming to Winterfell and him being the person that really sacks Winterfell. In this dream, he saw dead bodies of people Bran knows, Eobelly, Mycon, and Septon Chael. Bran is confused, saying the sea is far away and Winterfell is well fortified, but Jojen insists it will happen. Salt water will flood the castle at night. Again, it's the same idea of the vision that Bran just interpreted. It's not literal. The actual sea is not going to come over and drown Winterfell. It's the people of the sea, the Ironborn, Theon Greyjoy, and also the other stuff I already talked about. Bran wants to warn the people in the dream, but Jojen says it won't save them, which is interesting because if Jojen was able to accurately depict what this vision means, that the Greyjoys and the Ironborn are coming, you actually could save all these people. You could say, okay, the Ironborn are going to come and try and take Winterfell somehow. We know that to be the case based on Jojen's dream. Then yeah, you could save all these people's lives. The issue is going to be, one, people are not going to believe Jojen's dreams. One, for instance, Jojen and Meera are already kind of discriminated against. We saw this really not in Bran 4, but actually in Bran 3. When they arrive, people don't take them seriously. So one, you'd have to get people to actually believe Jojen's dream. And two, you'd have to also accurately depict what Jojen's dream means. So Jojen is right that it always does come to fruition, but not necessarily the reasons that he maybe thinks it is. And Meera then adds kind of what I talked about, that no one will believe the warning, just like Bran didn't at first. And what's crazier is that Bran has reasons to believe them. He has these magical powers. He does have these visions and all that stuff. So Bran, you would think, would be the one to believe Jojen, and even Jojen had to demonstrate the visions were true for Bran to believe him. It's too late for that to happen with really the people of Winterfell as a whole. Jojen then asks Bran about his own dreams, and Bran says he has wolf dreams where he hunts, dreams of the crow that tells him to fly, and dreams of a tree calling his name, which all seem to frighten him. His worst dreams are of falling, something he never feared before his real fall. Of course, Bran is going to fear falling. It was this traumatic event where he almost lost his life. He lost the ability to walk, and this is where his powers were really awoken by the three-eyed crow. Of course, the fall is going to be the worst thing that he dreams of. He reflects sadly on how he used to climb all over Winterfell, confident he'd never fall until he did. And this is why I always say that Bran seems to maybe understand what happened when he fell, but not really, right? Because he didn't fall. He was pushed. That was something that was not on his own accord. It was something else. And so, yes, Bran has these visions of having this golden man pushing him and all this stuff, but he still doesn't fully understand what occurred that night. He still doesn't actually get it based on kind of comments he makes. But that gets us into page 393. Meera asks Bran if that's all he dreams, and he says yes. Jojen calls Bran a warg, explaining it means a shape changer or beastling, a term that scares Bran, which it should. These are terms of people that are very much discriminated against, just like how the Krennic men are, how Jojen and Meera are, these people that can go into beasts and things like that. Think about the reputation Robb is garnering. Think about the way that Lancel, tries to describe Robb in that Sansa chapter. It's to make the Starks out as freaks, as these abnormal humans or creatures, and it goes into a lot of, I think, normal things, like just in real life, is a lot of people are scared of things that are different. And that's kind of what I think you're seeing here. Jojen then warns people may fear or hate him if they learn about his wolf dreams. Some might try to even kill him. Exactly what I just talked about there. is that it's that fear of kind of, whoa, this person can go into animals and all this other stuff. Like, that isn't normal. That isn't right. We talk about so much, I think, in today's world of, we should be normal and all this stuff. And it's just kind of nonsense, right? It's a social, we're getting into a really big words now. It's kind of this social construct of what is normal. Like, people should just be free to be whoever they want to be, is the way I put it, without it like harming other people and things like that. But like, be who you want to be. If you like Song of Ice and Fire, cool. If you like Power Rangers, cool. Like, I don't know. That was a random one, but we're getting a little unhinged in these Bran chapters. Sometimes you got to add a little extra to it, because Bran, he's not the best POV of this book. I don't think he's the worst POV of this book. I think that he's probably, as of right now, I'd put him higher than Jon and Dany. But outside of that, he's, Bran is Bran. Bran insists he isn't evil, it's just dreams. But Jojen says they aren't mere dreams. Jojen explains that Bran's soul connects to his wolf while he sleeps, calling it a powerful gift, which is interesting, right? We look at the language there. Bran's soul connects to his wolf. That really is going to be important when we look at something like Jon's death. It's a lot of reasons why when we look at Robb and his death, we have this idea that maybe his soul then went into Grey Wind, and so Robb dies twice. That's one of my favorite theories. It's because of lines like this, that Bran, a part of him, lives in his wolf. And we get more of that in Varamir's chapter at the beginning of A Dance with Dragons as well. It's really, really interesting because this is an important line for the future of the story. Bran protests that he wants to be a knight, but Jojen tells him he is a warg and can't change it. It's kind of like, this in a way is kind of repeating what Tyrion and Jon talk about in terms of your identity. You can't change that you're a warg. You can't change that you're never going to be a knight because you're crippled. This is what you are. Accept it. Jojen says Bran is the winged wolf who will never fly unless he opens his eye. Again, Jojen came to Winterfell because of a vision, and that seems to be referencing to Bran. And Bran still doesn't understand this idea. We've had all this talk about the three-eyed crow and opening his eye and his powers. Bran doesn't know how to do that, right? How do you physically get this third eye to happen, or what all this stuff? He then presses Bran's forehead where the third eye would be, but Bran feels only smooth skin. Bran asks how to open something that isn't there, and Jojen tells him it must be done with the heart, not fingers. It's not a physical thing, it's more like a mental thing. It's controlling this power that you have. But here's the biggest issue. Jojen's telling Bran all of these things. Jojen himself doesn't know how to really get that third eye to be awoken. At least he's not able to do it by himself. And that's something that's going to lead to the whole plot of A Storm of Swords. But here, it's interesting because Bran is sitting here going, you're telling me all these things, but yet you don't have really this understanding of it at all either. Jojen challenges Bran, asking if he's afraid. And Bran says Maester Luwin believes dreams are harmless. But Jojen insists the danger is real. The past, the future, and the truth. And Bran realizes that Luwin, it has to be wrong. Just based upon the dreams and the visions that Jojen has had, they always come true. Or at least the small sample size that Bran has seen, they've all come true. After they leave, Bran tried to open his third eye, but fails. He just doesn't understand how, and Jojen isn't telling him how to do so either. So Bran is in this weird spot where Bran's being told he's magical, but he's not being told how to do it, right? It's like if somebody told you, okay, you would be a great video editor, but they don't tell you how to video edit. Let's say there's no tutorials online. There's no way of learning how to actually improve as a video editor. You're just told that's you. That's who you're going to be. That's a lot of the way I look at Bran, is that he's being told he's this thing, but nobody is guiding him as to how to reach this thing. So he's just kind of left in the dark. He tries to warn others about Jojen's dreams, but they don't take it seriously, just like Mira said. And who's going to take this random Crannogman's dream seriously? That just doesn't make sense. Think about if I told you a dream I had and said, this is what's going to happen in your life. When you're 40 years old, you're going to have, a child randomly. Like you wouldn't believe that. Like, you would just be like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird, but okay, sure, whatever. And you would just laugh it off, just like how Mycon does. Mycon laughs it off, joking that if the sea is coming to him, the gods must be kind. And that's another thing. If you're thinking about it, like, what is this, magical event which the sea is going to get to Winterfell? It's just outlandish. as we get into page 394. Septon Shale dismisses Bran's warning, saying he's a strong swimmer from growing up near the White Knife and is unlikely to drown. Again, everybody's taking it literally and not figuratively. Aobelly is the only one who takes the warning seriously. He speaks to Jojen, then stops bathing and avoids the well out of fear. At least someone's taking it seriously, just it's again not in the right thing. Eventually 6 guards forcibly bathe him with scalding water. He screams they are trying to drown him, as the frog boy predicted. Afterward, Aobelly becomes bitter, glaring at Bran and Jojen and muttering angrily. Again, Aobelly is going to take this as they played a joke on me, right? So they were trying to see how far I would go. And now that it's been some time now, he's had a bath and nothing happened, he's not taking it seriously. Then, a few days later, Sir Roderick returned to Winterfell with a prisoner named Reek, a foul-smelling servant of the Bastard of Bolton. Unfortunately, we know this to be Ramsay Bolton, but it's a setting up of this plot, of this big arc, that this is going to be Ramsay. And you look at why Sir Roderick even takes Reek a prisoner, it's because you need somebody that is able to tell what was actually happening with Lady Hornwood. Reek is accused of helping the bastard murder Lady Hornwood. The bastard himself was killed by Sir Roderick's men while fleeing naked after committing some terrible act. Lady Hornwood had been locked in a tower, starved, and eventually resorted to cannibalism before dying, her mouth bloody and fingers bitten off. It is a horrifying thing. Think about it. You're treated so badly that you're willing to bite off your own fingers. You're willing to eat parts of yourself. It's a lot of these things that are missing from the television show, right? Like the television show completely goes away with the whole Ramsay arc of the book. They do it completely differently. And I don't think it's bad in the show at all. I think Ramsay's arc and his introduction is actually quite good in the show. But here in the book, it's also quite haunting as well. Despite being forced, the bastard had made her marry him and sign a will naming him as heir. Now, it is interesting because Ramsay does get all of these lands and all these things, but the way that he acquires it, if we know anything like somebody like Rob is not going to let this stand. So that's the biggest part of this, and that's why I made that video a couple of weeks ago about Ramsay and why he does what he does with the Hornwoods. And one of those things I look at is like, this only works because Rob's campaign fails. If Rob had come back at any point, like let's say that the Red Wedding doesn't happen and Rob is able to get back into the North, Ramsay would have been put to death. There's no shot Ramsay would have lived this. So again, Ramsay gets away with this, and even this, he barely gets away with it. But yeah. Maester Luwin then argues vows made under duress don't count, but Sir Roderick fears Roose Bolton may still press the claim. Roose Bolton will not press the claim if Rob says no. Rob is just, we know who he is as a person. He's not going to allow this. And so, yes, it is nice that we're having this little conversation about the legality of things. Still. Roderick is then troubled by the escalating violence between Manderley and Bolton forces in Hornwood lands and feels powerless to stop it. And Roderick is powerless to stop it. What can he do against the great houses of the Bolton and the Manderleys? And also is going to paint why Lord Manderley and the way he acts at Winterfell and all this stuff of him actually, bending to Roose Bolton's will is so interesting because we see this violence already happening. But what's even more interesting is you think about the Greyjoys, they're about to invade the North. You do see that the northern factions, even the limited men that they still have in the North, are still having issues between each other. So you think about it and you're like, okay, the Greyjoys, it kind of makes sense why they try to invade the North, but it really doesn't. But this could be a justification for why they do, that you have these northern factions warring amongst each other. Roderick keeps Reek alive as the only witness to the bastard's worst crimes, hoping Roose Bolton might renounce his claim upon hearing them. We know that Roose won't back down unless forced to, and I think Rob would force Roose to back down. That's what I think would happen here. I don't think you necessarily need Reek. You could have Roderick just tell what was happening, the state that Lady Hornwood was in, but I do understand why keeping Reek alive is important. Roderick then scolds Bran for allegedly commanding guards not to watch, referencing the Alebelly incident. Bran replies seriously that the sea is coming and Alebelly is going to drown, repeating Jojen's prophecy. But of course, nobody's going to believe this, and they're not going to take it seriously, as we get into page 395. Maester Luwin explained to Sir Roderick that Jojen Reed believes he sees the future in dreams, but Luwin cautions Bran about the uncertainty of prophecy. Again, prophecy can be misread. And it is misread, right? We know that it is misread, but the worry and the concern for the safety of Winterfell is truthful, right? It is truthful. They just don't have the right idea. It's men that are coming to Winterfell, but they are the men of the sea. They are the Greyjoys. He notes, however, that there is real trouble along the stony shore, raiders attacking villages. Leopold Tallheart sent his nephew Benfred to respond, but the raiders are likely to flee and strike elsewhere. Again, right now the Greyjoys have kind of covered up their first opening assaults. These are just raiders, are not to be taken seriously until the main thrust happens. Sir Roderick curses the raiders' cowardice and says such things wouldn't happen if their army wasn't so far south, which is the truth. That's why the raiders are picking at their weakness. Well, the Greyjoys are picking at their weakness. Roderick asks Bran what else Jojen said, and Bran tells him Jojen saw water flooding Winterfell and drowning Alebelly, Mycon, and Septon Chael. Roderick says he'll leave Alebelly behind if he must ride out, and is comforted that he himself wasn't seen drowning. Roderick takes a little bit more into what Bran is saying, albeit again, everyone's fearing the water. It's not the water that they should be fearing. Bran feels hopeful that avoiding danger might change his fate. That night, playing tiles with the Reeds, Shmira shares that hope, but Jojen disagrees, saying green dreams cannot be changed. And we understand, at least I do, why Mira is so hopeful. And everything else that Jojen says, Mira is right on his back saying, yes, this is the case. But here it's different. Mira and Jojen are different on the way that they believe his visions are true. And I used this chapter very heavily when I did my Jojen paced video of I don't think it was last Winds of Winter event, but the Winds of Winter event before maybe? I'm not 100% sure on that. They're all getting mixed in my mind. But I used this chapter a lot because we get that opening idea of what do Jojen's dreams fully mean? Are they set in stone? And why does Mira seem to differentiate from Jojen? My idea is likely that means that Jojen has seen what his fate will be, or at least has some indication that he is going to die in terms of awakening Bran's powers. That is his fate. He's told that to Mira, likely, and the reason that Mira is sharing that this hope of it can be changed is so that Jojen doesn't die, that maybe there is some chance that Jojen's dream won't come true. Mira questions why the gods would send warnings if they can't be heeded, and Jojen sadly admits he doesn't know. Sadly, that is the key part there. Now, yes, Jojen could be sad because his visions are almost a burden, right? He sees people dying, and he can't change that fact. But I think it's deeper than that. I think given what we're going to see later on in the story, especially as Storm of Swords references this vision idea in Jojen's fate a lot, Jojen is probably sad because he knows he's going to die. We even think about when Bran, gets really angry at Jojen and Mira and the wolves attack. Jojen is saying he's not going to die. This isn't the day that he dies. Jojen seems to know of his fate. This kind of reinforces that. She insists that people should fight their fates, Bran as well. Again, I think she's talking to Jojen, not to Bran. Jojen should fight his fate, not Bran necessarily. Bran grows scared and asks if he's going to drown, and Mira avoids answering. Bran presses Jojen, who says he dreamed of Reek standing over the dead bodies of Bran and Rickon, skinning their faces with a red blade. So we get another vision here, and we know what this is really going to mean. We know that it's going to be that there's going to be these fake Bran and Rickons that are killed in their stead. And we know that Reek is not actually Reek, he's Ramsay. This is, again, a little bit more of that foreshadowing, skinning their faces with a red blade. Horrified, Mira says she could kill Reek right now, but Jojen says the guards won't let her, and no one would believe the reason. So yeah, Mira would be arrested, and she would be thrown in prison and probably tried for murder, and probably killed or whatnot. But with that being said, Let's say Mira was able to kill Ramsay right now. It would change a lot of things going forward. And it's very interesting. So again, another reason why Jojen could be sad. He believes Bran and Rickon are both going to die, and there's nothing that he can do to stop it. So there's layers of this sadness of where you can pick and choose why he is truly sad. But Bran reminds them that he has guards too, Alebelly, Poxy, Tim, Hayhead, and others. As we get into page 396, Jojen looks at Bran with pity and says, the guards won't be able to stop Reek, though he doesn't know how it happens. He's seen the end. And this is the case, right? Jojen has a vision that is true, but it also isn't true. It's not literal. And that's something that Jojen doesn't really figure out. He doesn't understand that most of the visions that he's getting are not physically or the truth. It's more of a figurative interpretation. That's what we should be looking at. In his green dream, Bran and Rickon are dead, lying in the crypts beneath Winterfell with the old kings and their stone wolves. Now, interesting that Bran and Rickon are dead. We know that Bran and Rickon will be in the crypts, but they will not be dead. So again, the dream is right, but the interpreter is wrong. Bran tries to imagine escaping to Greywater or to the Three-Eyed Crow, hoping that distance might save him. Jojen tells him it won't help. The dream was green, and green dreams do not lie. The green dreams don't lie. The interpreters misinterpret. That's the huge point of this. This is really the first time we're introduced into this topic of prophecy and all of these ideas, and we're told here all these different things that do seem to come to pass, but they don't come to pass the way we're told, the way Jojen tells us. That's really important because we're going to see a lot of that going forward. And, it's one of those reasons where when we're told prophecy, you're supposed to question it. Patchface is another one where his kind of prophecies are not usually literal. They're usually a lot of figurative stuff. So very important chapter for terms of prophecy and magic and all that type of stuff. But I hope you guys all enjoyed. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.